I do hope you have been enjoying our City Focus Week, which we have been collaborating on with our friends and partners at Nova Financial. And joining me all this week is Nova MD Paul Mahoney. And Nova have a footprint in 3 of the main cities, the cities that we've done a mini tour around over the week. So we've been to Birmingham, yesterday we were in Manchester, and today we are heading to Liverpool. And Paul, I've really been enjoying our chats because there's actually so much to say and so much positivity about what's going on in the cities, which is quite surprising post COVID-19. But I think it's clear evidence that the cities are going to play an enormous pivotal role in kind of firing up the UK economy again, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, these cities have bounced back the best of any, which I suppose probably isn't all that surprising, given that they are the most robust cities outside of London. So you would expect them to be the most resilient. But yes, definitely that has been the case.
Well, let's talk about Liverpool now, because, as I said, there's a lot of things to talk about it. And I think one of the first things to say, of course, is that it is a thriving port, and it's one of Europe's leading manufacturing clusters. We've talked about clusters before. It's when a city has an area of excellence for a certain sector or discipline, and these clusters are great from a landlord perspective, because that young, creative, professional people are going to be coming into the area because of the work that's available. So very, very high tenant demand across Liverpool where these clusters are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's, the Liverpool city centre is very interesting because it's a really, really nice city. Yeah, architecture wise, there's some nice restaurants there. It's great in that small little area of the city centre. It just depends which direction you go from there as to where you end up. If you go the mile in the wrong direction, you can end up in some not so nice areas. You go the mile in the right direction, you end up in even nicer areas. It's an interesting city because it tends to be very central focused.
Well, yeah, we've been documenting the recovery of these 3 cities on Property Tribes, and every time some information or news comes in about how the city is recovering, I add it to the thread. So these threads are building up into a very helpful resource for landlords to see where the opportunities are in these cities post-COVID. And I do think it's a good time for Paul and I to be having these conversations, because we've just come out of lockdown. We're seeing a reversal of the trend of people moving away from the cities. We're seeing young people wanting to get back into their lifestyle, aren't we, Paul, of, restaurants, bars, cinemas, theatre. That's the lifestyle that cities offer. And I do think that's going to remain attractive. And of course, Liverpool has these things in absolute abundance.
Yeah. You mentioned about the ports. Obviously, that's a big one. Those ports are being extended as part of the Liverpool Waters development by Peel Group, one of the biggest developers in the UK. They own a massive amount of land in Manchester as well, but predominantly in Liverpool. So that there's the over £1 billion being spent extending the ports and building over 1,000, actually, I think it's way more than 1,000, a few thousand homes along the northern part of the docks. They also own another site called Wirral Waters, just across the river, Mersey, where they're building another 1,000 homes. So that whole area is regenerating as well. And I think that's quite an interesting area in Liverpool too, whereas previously I probably wouldn't have ventured from the centre. With the amount of money that's being spent just across the river or the tunnel, because there is a tunnel, that makes it very easy to commute into the centre. With the amount of money that's being spent there, I think that's quite an interesting location to be considering now to invest, especially when you're sort of nice and close to the river. You can have some nice views out over the water and the city. There are some good properties around there.
Well, I'm a massive advocate of any property with a river or a water view. They definitely, yeah, you pay a premium, but I think then that, you know, that's reflected when you want to sell it. It's going to be highly desirable because of the view. Tenants absolutely love it, so it probably rent quicker. It may not achieve a great deal more rent, but I think overall, any property with a water or sea view is a really good thing to have in your portfolio. And of course, at Liverpool, we've got the docks as well, and there's a new cruise terminal being developed there. And of course, when you got something like that occurring, it's all the support industries that come in to support the activity that's going on. And again, good news for landlords, tenants in stable jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've seen some great regeneration take place in Liverpool. You go back a few years, there wasn't all that much in the Baltic Triangle, which is the kind of southeast area of the city centre. It was mostly light industrial, and that's all been pretty well redeveloped now. Lots of residential, lots of bars and restaurants, and that's kind of the cool area to live now in Liverpool is the Baltic Triangle. Still very close to Albert Docks and the waterfront there, which again is absolutely lovely. And then the area that now seems to be getting redeveloped the most is the northern part of the city. You know, we were talking before our chat just now about the redevelopment of Everton Stadium, or the moving of Everton Stadium. You know, and the massive amount of infrastructure that's going to be built around that will have a huge impact on the areas just north of the city centre in Liverpool.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Everton Stadium. That was on my list actually to come to next, and they've broken ground on that only last month, so July 2021. It's been called the People's Stadium, and it's very much a project that the whole Liverpool community is involved in, and it's so much more than just a football stadium. It's a whole new area, a whole new community. I think, what am I looking at? Yeah, just checking my notes, sorry. So much going on in that area around the football stadium. Speaking from my own experience, when I started my investment career in London, and again, this is interesting, Paul, because we've talked so many times about seeing past what might be considered negative things in a city. One of my best ever properties was in Highbury and Islington. When I bought it, there was actually a recycling incineration plant there, so very unsightly area, but that was scheduled to be knocked down, and they were going to build the Emirates Stadium on the site. So I bought it just as they were closing down the incineration plant and starting work on the stadium. Football stadiums always have a huge positive impact on an area. Because of the
similar to what Etihad have done in Manchester for Manchester City. You know, that wasn't just a stadium either. That was an entertainment centre, loads of residential housing, and pretty much transformed that whole area of northern Manchester. So yeah, that's it's interesting that we've seen that. Or examples of that take place in London and Manchester. Now we can see it starting in Liverpool. You know, it's inevitable that the positive impact that's going to have on that area. I think, you know, there are the three big things that are taking place in Liverpool and can't be overlooked. Is the Everton Stadium and everything that goes with that. You know, there's an entertainment sector to it and all sorts. Liverpool Waters, which is not far from there, actually. All it is slightly closer to the waterfront and the extension of the ports further north, and then Wirral Waters across the way. Add those things together, you're at about £5 billion being spent on Liverpool, which is a smaller city than Manchester and Birmingham. And so that's lots and lots of money to spend on that city. That's going to create thousands of jobs whilst it's being built, and then thousands of jobs after it's built, which is all very positive.
Very positive indicators. And if we move to the Queen's Dock, there's a major renovation going on of the famous The Keel building. That's being renovated and transformed into a co-working space. So a lot of investment going in there as well. And yeah, good house price appreciation for Liverpool is on the cards, judging by some of the reports I've seen. So as
prices tend to be a little bit less than Birmingham and Manchester as well. And also because of that, yields are a bit higher. You know, as we've seen, across the spectrum. Look at London being the most expensive city in the UK. Going back, as I say, 6 or 7 years, the yields in Birmingham and Manchester were higher because property prices were lower. Now, yields don't tend to keep up with prices. And the best explanation I can give for that is that people borrow to buy property, and therefore the gap between incomes and property prices can be greater than the gap between incomes and rents, because no one borrows to pay rent. So therefore, when property prices increase, quite substantially in a location, the rents they do tend to increase a bit, but nowhere near as much as the property prices. So at the moment, you can still get properties in Liverpool at very good values, and therefore, 7% plus yields are achievable. And therefore, if the property prices grow, you're still getting a really good yield on the cash you've invested.
Absolutely. And again, I know that for Nova clients, some of them go for just standard ASTs in their properties. Others consider short-term rentals. Of course, Liverpool, great for the tourist industry when the world opens back up again properly. Obviously, Beatles, massive attraction, loads of great shopping areas in Liverpool as well. So lots of choice for landlords there as well.
Interestingly, Liverpool has the largest open-air shopping centre in Europe. But it's always raining there, so I'm not sure why it's open air. It's obviously a great tourist attraction. I think it has one of the highest, it has one of the highest tourist numbers of any city in the UK.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning, Paul, that you are actually, Nova is actually on the ground in these cities. You have property managers and agents actually living in the city.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got boots on the ground. We source properties there. We finance them. We manage them on ASTs, short-term lets. Sometimes we might become the client's tenant and we'll short-term let the units, or we will do short-term let management for clients. So we offer a broad range of options so far as what might be suitable for that individual.
No, that's really good to have that choice. And there was a question actually on Property Tribes this morning about Airbnb in apartments. And obviously, in many cases, it is actually against the lease. But of course, in the Nova cases, you actually work with apartments that do allow short-term and holiday lets, don't you?
Yeah. So historically, it has been against the leases in general. But what we've found lately is that more and more leases have allowed it, or at least they have allowed it subject to approval. So sometimes you may need to get the approval of the freeholder, and so long as the property is well managed and you're not having parties there every weekend, which you can avoid. Something that we do quite well is very closely manage the types of tenants we have going into the properties. There's a whole range of leases out there. Some just allow it on a sort of blanket basis. Others need approval. Others disallow it. But that all depends on the property itself.
Well, it's just worth flagging that up.
You need to be aware of that depending on what your plans are.
Absolutely. And also in terms of your finance as well, because if you were doing short-term rentals, you'd need a specialist type of mortgage. So it's good just to highlight these little issues as we go along. Anyway, Paul, I have saved the best for last as far as Liverpool is concerned. We've had the news very recently after the last budget that it was granted Freeport status. And again, fantastic news for the city, because this is going to create a new economic and trading area that has very favorable conditions, going to attract a lot more activity into the area, make it very attractive for business, for manufacturing, importing, all sorts of good stuff going on in these economic areas. So I have to say the future is looking very, very bright for Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely. All the fundamentals are definitely pointing in a positive direction, which is what we want when it comes to investing in property.
Yes, it's also got a very booming digital sector as well, which I think is just interesting to mention in passing, because obviously digital is another area that's really, really growing, attracts young people, young creatives, creates another cluster of activity. So Liverpool is just not a one-trick pony at all, is it?
No, absolutely not. There's many factors that contribute to why that city is going to perform well. Again, similar to what we spoke about yesterday with Manchester, is we want multifaceted reasons to invest, and in the right circumstances, Liverpool definitely offers that.
Well, that's fantastic. So we've been to Birmingham, we've been to Manchester, we've just finished our mini tour of Liverpool. And tomorrow, just to close out the week, Paul and I will just be doing a review of the week, some of the things that we've learned, some of the key indicators to invest in City. We'll kind of do a summary of the whole week and just share our kind of closing thoughts on the topic of investing in cities. So please join us there. Beneath this thread, I will put the Liverpool recovery thread that Nova have been powering on Property Tribes, and I do suggest that you subscribe to it because I'm updating it regularly with all the latest good positive news about what's going on in the city, so you can keep your intel about Liverpool up to date. So go and check that out, and I hope you'll join us tomorrow for the final instalment of our City Focus Week in association with Nova Financial. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.